Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're the place you come to get clear signal from, well, often very noisy crypto research. We filter it down, give you the actionable insights.
And today we are diving headfirst into one of the most, I'd say, debated and volatile narratives out there, Solana.
Absolutely. It feels like every other week there's a headline, right?
Yeah.
You see it constantly. Is Solana dead?
Exactly. That's the core question we really want to unpack. Why does that question keep coming up even now? So our mission today is to use quite a diverse set of sources. We've got stuff from Cointelegraph, deep dives from the Block Research and Messari, Glassnode data, even a Visa blog post.
Right, a real mix.
To give you a fast but comprehensive look at both sides. The bear case, why people doubt it, and the bull case, why others see this massive potential. We're focusing purely on the tech and the financials driving this whole drama.
Okay, so we'll unpack this high-stakes ecosystem battle. But before we really get into the weeds of whether Solana's, staging this epic comeback or if it's truly on shaky ground, there was something interesting in the sources, wasn't there?
Yeah, actually kind of a meta point that popped up. The sources themselves mention how important content engagement is for, the whole crypto research space.
It's about how analysis like this gets supported, right? They were talking about how channels, researchers putting in the hours to synthesize all this complex data. Well, your participation actually matters.
It really does. It's more than just numbers. Things like subscribing, hitting that notification bell, leaving a comment, liking the content. It acts as a feedback loop.
And in this world of algorithms where, let's face it, quality analysis is fighting against a lot of noise and just hot takes, that engagement, it gives it a boost, doesn't it?
Precisely. It helps make sure these kinds of source-driven deep dives actually reach people. It supports the creation of more quality crypto insights, more that alpha, as they call it.
So basically, by engaging, you're helping fuel the engine that delivers this kind of detailed analysis in this very specific, very technical field.
Well put. It's kind of the support structure for high-signal content.
Okay, good. Glad we covered that.
Yeah.
Now let's dive into the core drama. We have to start with the dark days, right? Where did all this "is Solana dead" talk even come from? To really get why the comeback is so significant, you first have to understand what almost took Solana down. And it wasn't just one thing, was it? The sources are pretty clear. The big one was network reliability. Those crises in 2021, 2022.
Oh, yeah. That was Solana's Achilles heel, plain and simple. And it wasn't just minor hiccups. We're talking multiple critical network-wide outages. Full stops.
Like the whole thing just went offline.
For hours at a time. The sources make it clear these weren't just, periods of high fees or slow transactions. These were liveness failures. The network just stopped processing blocks entirely.
Okay, so if your whole brand is built on being this super fast, high-performance chain, what does a complete shutdown like that do to your core promise? And technically, what was causing these failures?
Well, it completely guts the value proposition, doesn't it? That promise of, 65,000 transactions per second. That means absolutely nothing if the network's down for 8 hours straight.
Right.
Technically, the analysis often pointed towards the consensus mechanism, specifically how proof of history, their special sauce, interacted with the proof-of-stake validators under stress. Often, it was a bottleneck in transaction processing.
A bottleneck triggered by?
Usually a sudden, massive flood of transactions. Think bots swarming an initial DX offering or a really hyped-up NFT mint.
So basically spam. People trying to game the system would just overwhelm it.
Pretty much. The sources talk about the leader validator getting choked, unable to process the queue. This could lead the network into something called fork fatigue.
Fork fatigue.
Yeah, essentially the validators couldn't agree on the valid chain, on the current state of the network, and everything would just grind to a halt. The key thing is the architecture was so optimized for speed, it turned out to be fragile under these unexpected massive load spikes, at least initially.
And fixing it wasn't easy.
Fixing it required the developers to coordinate a manual restart, a hard reboot of the entire network, which, they had to do to get things running again, but it definitely added fuel to that other big criticism, the centralization argument.
We'll get to that. But first, just as they're grappling with these core technical problems, 2022 brings a financial hurricane. Maybe even worse than the outages. We're talking FTX and Alameda.
Oh, man. Cataclysmic is probably the right word. Solana was incredibly close to Sam Bankman-Fried's empire. Financially, developmentally. FTX and Alameda weren't just investors. They were huge early backers, huge proponents. They helped launch tons of projects on Solana.
So when FTX just imploded, the connection immediately became toxic, right?
Hmm.
How bad was the financial exposure, and what did that do to market psychology?
It was massive. The source materials show Alameda held enormous amounts of SOL, the native token. And the bankruptcy meant this massive chunk of SOL was just hanging over the market, threatening liquidation for ages.
The price action was brutal.
It was a horror show. Critics had a field day. Remember, SOL went from that $250 all-time high, then post-FTX, it crashed way down, fell below $10. People weren't just questioning the tech anymore. They were literally calling it dead, linking it directly to fraud, financial crime, systemic risk.
That psychological damage you mentioned, it can't be overstated, can it? Being tied so closely to one of the biggest scandals in crypto history.
Absolutely. It wasn't just a tech issue or a price dip. It became an ethical stain. Institutional investors especially had to distance themselves, rebuilding trust after that. It required more than just technical patches. It needed a whole psychological reset for the market.
People had to ask, is this a viable tech platform, or am I buying into something fundamentally tainted?
Exactly that question. Are we investing in innovation or just the remnants of a collapsed, potentially manipulated market?
Which brings us neatly to that third major criticism, the one that lingers even when things are going well: centralization. Compared to Ethereum, you always hear Solana is too centralized. Why is that such a persistent issue? What does it mean in practice?
Right. So centralization here mostly refers to who controls the network and how hard it is to participate in securing it. Solana has historically had fewer validators, the computers confirming transactions, compared to Ethereum.
Fewer independent nodes means, theoretically, more risk of collusion or censorship.
That's the core argument, yes. And the reason for fewer validators often comes down to cost. Running a Solana validator is significantly more expensive than running, say, an Ethereum node.
Why is that? Is it just harder technically?
It's mainly the hardware requirements, and that's a direct result of Solana's speed ambition. Ethereum's designed to be runnable on decent consumer hardware. Someone in their garage could potentially stake.
But Solana needs more horsepower.
A lot more. Because it's processing so much data so quickly with proof of history, you need serious gear. We're talking high-end, sometimes institutional-grade GPUs, massive amounts of RAM, incredibly fast and expensive SSDs just to keep up with the state growth and transaction throughput.
So it's not just a technical barrier, it's an economic one.
Exactly. That high hardware cost creates a natural barrier to entry. It limits the pool of potential validators to those entities, often institutions or dedicated staking providers with significant capital.
And a smaller pool means?
It increases the theoretical risk. Could a small group coordinate? Could they censor? And it looked especially bad during those outages when, as we said, a coordinated restart by the core developers was needed.
Yeah.
That feeds the narrative. The sources consistently point to validator count as a key metric to watch. Is that number growing? Is the network becoming genuinely more distributed? That's crucial for long-term health.
Okay, so the bear case is pretty stark. Repeated network failures tied to the core architecture. Deep financial contamination from the FTX implosion. And this ongoing question mark about centralization because of the hardware demands. That's a tough set of challenges. But clearly, that wasn't the end of the story. Solana didn't just fade away. It mounted this incredible comeback built on the very strengths that maybe the critics sometimes overlook. Let's start with the absolute core of the bull case, that raw speed.
Speed is Solana's identity, full stop. Despite all the troubles, the fundamental architecture is still designed for massive throughput. It remains an outlier in terms of potential capacity.
And let's nail down that number again. The sources cite 65,000 plus TPS transactions per second. That just sounds astronomical. What technically allows that, and how does it really compare?
The key innovation, Solana's unique contribution, is proof of history, or POH. You can think of POH as like a super fast, verifiable cryptographic clock built into the blockchain itself. Yeah, it creates this trusted, ordered sequence of events before transactions even get bundled into a block and confirmed by validators. It timestamps everything incredibly precisely and verifiably.
So instead of validators arguing about the order of transactions, POH provides a common time reference up front.
Exactly. It lets the network process transactions in parallel much more efficiently, rather than needing strict sequential ordering and confirmation like many older blockchains. It basically turns a slow sequential task into a highly parallel one.
And that's where the 65,000 plus TPS comes from.
That's the theoretical peak enabled by POH. Now, when you compare that to, say, Ethereum's base layer, maybe 1530 TPS on a good day, or even other layer ones, Solana's potential speed is just in a different league.
What about layer 2s on Ethereum? They're fast too, right?
They are much faster than the base layer, definitely. Some L2s can handle thousands of TPS, but achieving that consistently under heavy load while keeping fees minimal and ensuring quick finality back to Ethereum, that's still a challenge. Solana aims to do it all on layer 1. It's selling the Formula 1 car of blockchains, built for things that need near-instant speed and huge volume like global finance or complex online games.
And that speed capability, that's what enables the ecosystem growth we saw, right? It opens doors for applications that just wouldn't work on slower chains. So where did we see the growth happening?
Yeah, the speed is the foundation. We saw growth returning across the main areas: DeFi, decentralized finance, NFTs, non-fungible tokens, and increasingly high-performance gaming. But the really crucial metric, the one showing real commitment came back, was the rebound in TVL.
TVL, total value locked in DeFi protocols. Why is that specific metric so important after the FTX crash?
Because FTX didn't just hurt the SOL price, it vaporized billions in liquidity from Solana's DeFi ecosystem and absolutely shattered user trust. Seeing TVL climb back up, that tells you a few really important things.
Like what?
It means users are trusting the smart contracts again. Liquidity providers are willing to lock up capital, signaling long-term belief. And maybe most importantly, developers are building again, creating innovative protocols because they see a stable capital base returning. The sources highlight growth in things like high-speed decentralized exchanging, lending platforms, margin trading stuff that needs Solana's low latency. That returning capital is the clearest sign the ecosystem sees a future.
And this renewed developer and user activity, it wasn't happening in a vacuum. There was still strong institutional backing, wasn't there? Even through the worst of it.
That's a really key point. Major VC firms, the sources mention, Multicoin, A16's Jump Crypto, these weren't fair-weather friends. They stuck with Solana, continued investing, even when the price was in the gutter and everyone was predicting doom post-FTX.
What does that signal? Just stubbornness or something more?
It signals deep, long-term conviction in the core technology. These are smart people with deep pockets and long investment horizons. Their continued backing suggests they believe the fundamental tech advantage of POH and the architecture is real, and that the fixes being implemented would address the reliability issues. They were betting on the engineers and the core design.
But maybe the biggest validation, moving beyond just VC belief into actual enterprise adoption, was that Visa partnership announced in 2023.
Absolutely. That was a huge moment. The sources emphasize Visa specifically started testing stablecoin payments on Solana for cross-border transactions. This is where the theoretical TPS meets the real-world demands of global finance.
So Visa needs to move money internationally, fast and cheap. They looked around. Surely they looked at Ethereum L2s, other chains. Why Solana? What did its architecture offer?
Sources suggest it was that combination of raw speed and very fast transaction finality. Visa isn't speculating, they're moving value. They need to know a transaction is settled, completely confirmed, irreversible within seconds, not minutes. This is critical for managing liquidity efficiently across borders.
And Solana's proof of history helps with that finality.
Yes, because POH provides that verifiable order before consensus, it allows for incredibly fast and crucially predictable finality times right there on the main layer 1 chain.
Whereas, say, an Ethereum L2 might be fast for the transaction itself, but confirming it fully back on the main Ethereum chain could add time or cost uncertainty.
That seems to be the differentiator Visa valued. It moves Solana beyond just impressive lab numbers into something a global financial giant sees as potentially suitable for its core infrastructure needs. Despite the past outages, that core speed and finality proposition was compelling enough for them to engage seriously. It's a massive institutional nod.
Okay, let's shift gears to the comeback itself, the price action, the market sentiment. How did Solana go from being written off to staging one of the most dramatic rebounds we've seen in crypto between 2023 and 2025?
It really is an incredible case study in resilience, isn't it? Looking at the SOL price history cited in the sources, the swings are just wild. All-time high near $250, then that catastrophic crash below $10 after FTX, and then this phenomenal recovery, pushing back above $200 in 2025.
That journey, darling, dead resurrected it, explains why the "is it dead" question never fully goes away. It has looked dead before.
Exactly. Which leads to the essential question the sources grapple with. Is this latest run sustainable? Is it built on solid fundamentals, or is it another wave of hype that could crash again?
And speaking of hype, the sources point to a major, maybe unexpected catalyst for the recovery, something traditional finance often scoffs at. Meme coins.
Ah, yes. The meme coin phenomenon of 2024. It was huge for Solana. The sources specifically mention coins like BONK and YF driving insane amounts of activity. And while, yeah, it's highly speculative, its impact on the network was very real, very tangible. It was almost like a massive accidental stress
A
test.
stress test. How so? Brought retail back, obviously, but what did it prove?
It proved the network could handle absolutely enormous, sustained retail transaction volume while keeping fees negligible. Think about trading meme coins. You need fast confirmations and dirt cheap fees because you might be making dozens of trades quickly.
Right, you can't pay $5 in gas for a $10 meme coin trade.
Precisely. And during the peak frenzy for coins like BONK, the sources noted Solana was processing millions, maybe tens of millions of transactions daily, yet fees often stayed fractions of a penny, sometimes well under a thousandth of a dollar.
Wow. So it demonstrated not just the theoretical speed, but the practical cost efficiency under extreme, real-world, highly speculative load.
Exactly. It showed the architecture could support mass retail activity even under duress, without grinding to a halt or becoming prohibitively expensive. That high transaction volume, that network activity, it wasn't just hype, it was real usage, translating into real metrics. You
Yeah.
simply couldn't have had that kind of meme coin explosion on a slower, more expensive chain.
Okay, so meme coins brought the retail frenzy and proved the network could handle it. But at the same time, Solana was fighting another battle, a more complex one, on the NFT front. This is tricky, right? They actually lost some ground initially.
Yeah, the NFT story on Solana is complicated. It's got twists. Early on, Solana had a really vibrant, culturally significant NFT scene. But then, as the sources detail, some of the biggest, most influential early projects, DeGods and iZerots, are the famous examples. They actually decided to leave Solana,
They migrated. Where did they go?
mostly to Ethereum or Polygon. This was happening during that period of network instability and the cloud of the FTX collapse.
That must have looked terrible. Like the smart money or the cultural leaders were abandoning ship for the perceived safety and network effects of Ethereum.
That was definitely the narrative at the time. A huge blow, it seemed. But here's the crucial second part of the story. The ecosystem regenerated. The sources highlight that after those big names left, new, innovative Solana-native NFT projects surged to fill the void.
So it wasn't dependent on those initial flagship projects.
Apparently not entirely. It showed resilience. The developer and artist community wasn't wiped out. And the core value proposition for NFTs on Solana, incredibly cheap minting and trading, high speed for reveals and market activity, that remained a powerful draw for new creators and collectors.
So when we look at metrics like NFT trading volume, comparing Solana and Ethereum, it's less about who has the single biggest collection and more about the ebb and flow, the ability to recover and compete.
Exactly. The sources use that NFT volume data to show that Solana demonstrated organic regeneration. It proved it could rebuild its cultural relevance in that key sector, showing that the underlying tech advantages, fast, cheap transactions, are perhaps the most durable moat, even if individual projects make strategic moves based on market conditions or perceived risks elsewhere.
All right, we've covered the near-death experiences, the core strengths that fueled the comeback, and the recent performance. Let's zoom out for the final stretch. Why does Solana's fate actually matter in the grand scheme of things? For the average user, for developers, for institutions?
It matters because Solana represents a very specific, very bold bet on how Web3 should scale. It's the leading example, the primary torchbearer for what we might call the high-performance blockchain narrative.
Which is the idea that
The idea that for crypto and decentralized applications to truly reach mass adoption, billions of users interacting seamlessly every day, the base layer, the layer 1 blockchain itself, has to be incredibly fast, incredibly cheap, and capable of handling enormous transaction volume directly. Solana is the biggest test case for that philosophy.
and putting itself forward like that puts it in direct competition with,
Yeah.
well, everyone, but especially Ethereum, right? It's a clash of scaling philosophies.
Absolutely. This is where the strategic stakes for the future of Web3 infrastructure become really clear. You basically have two dominant competing visions for how to scale the decentralized internet, and Solana's success or failure is a major data point for which vision might ultimately win out.
Okay, so what's the first vision? The Solana vision.
We could call it the monolithic vision. Solana's approach is to optimize everything, execution, security, data availability, all on a single, super fast layer 1 chain. Handle all the traffic, all the complexity right there.
And if Solana thrives long term,
If it thrives, it validates this monolithic thesis. It proves that purpose-built high-speed layer 1s can compete with and maybe even outperform Ethereum in demanding sectors like finance, gaming, or social media. It strongly suggests a multi-chain future where different L1s carve out niches based on their performance characteristics. It keeps the Ethereum killer narrative alive and well.
Okay, and the second vision, the Ethereum approach.
That's the modular vision. Ethereum is betting on a layered approach. Keep the base layer 1 focused primarily on security and decentralization, acting as a settlement layer, but offload the actual high-speed execution to specialized layer 2 solutions, often called rollups.
So speed happens on layer 2, security on layer 1.
Exactly. In this vision, Ethereum's vast network effect and established security are paramount, and scalability comes from building on top of it. If Solana ultimately fails to overcome its challenges' reliability, centralization concerns, it strengthens the argument for the modular approach. It suggests that new monolithic L1s maybe can't beat the network effects and the security model of Ethereum combined with its evolving L2 ecosystem.
So it's really a fundamental debate about architecture. Integrated speed on L1 versus layered specialization built on a secure base.
That's the core tension. And it means when you're looking at Solana, you're not just evaluating a single project. You're evaluating an entire approach to scaling Web3. The stakes are incredibly high for developers choosing where to build, for investors allocating capital, for everyone involved.
It forces you, as you analyze the sources, to really weigh those competing factors. Ethereum's proven decentralization and longevity versus Solana's raw speed and demonstrated enterprise interest.
You have to apply that critical thinking. Can Solana maintain its speed advantage while sufficiently decentralizing? Can Ethereum's L2s become seamless and cheap enough to negate Solana's L1 speed advantage? These are the big questions.
It leads back to those listener prompts from the source material hooks like, will Solana ever actually flip Ethereum in adoption? Speed is one thing, but network effects are powerful. Or that practical question. If you had $1,000 to bet today on the dominant Web3 architecture in 5 years, Solana's monolithic speed or Ethereum's modular L2s, where does the smart money go based on everything we know?
It's a tough call. You're balancing immediate, measurable performance and growth against long-term, battle-tested security and decentralization. It really requires synthesizing everything we've discussed, the depths of the failures, the heights of the comeback, the underlying technical trade-offs. #tag outro.
Okay, so let's try and distill this down. What are the key takeaways from our deep dive today? The case against Solana, the bear case, it's serious. Rooted in those past critical outages that really damage its core promise, and that devastating financial link to FTX and Alameda.
Absolutely. Those are scars that don't just disappear. But the bull case is equally compelling, anchored in undeniable metrics. That staggering 65,000 plus TPS potential from proof of history, the clear recovery in DeFi activity shown by TVL growth, and perhaps most significantly, that real-world enterprise validation from a giant like Visa, seeking its speed and fast finality.
So Solana isn't just, limping along anymore. It's actively competing. It's been validated by serious players, reignited by retail enthusiasm, even if that came via meme coins initially.
Yeah,
But
that centralization question, largely driven by those demanding hardware requirements, it still looms. That remains the key challenge they have to continuously address and demonstrably improve upon.
so the story is really one of bold tech ambition clashing head-on with market realities and technical hurdles. It's shown incredible resilience and ability to come back from the brink. But that fundamental architectural battle, monolithic speed versus modular security, that's still playing out across the entire Web3 landscape.
Which leads us to maybe one final thought to leave you with, connecting directly back to Solana's core strength. We know speed, that potential for 65,000 plus TPS, super low fees, fast finality is its main differentiator. It's why enterprises like Visa are interested. So the provocative question is this.
How fast do the competitors need to get?
Exactly. How quickly must rival layer 1s, or maybe more critically, how quickly and how cheaply must Ethereum's layer 2 solutions truly catch up to Solana's level of transactional throughput and cost effectiveness before Solana manages to lock in a permanent, perhaps unshakable advantage in those really demanding high-value use cases like global payments, DeFi derivatives, and massive online gaming?
That race for performance and efficiency. That's going to define so much of the next few years in crypto infrastructure. It's definitely one to watch. Thanks for joining us for the deep dive.
We'll see you next time.